Oh, John.
Hello, Oliver.
Now, the churches are closed for Holy Mass because of the coronavirus. So you're going to talk about it? Go ahead.
That's right. And which is they're open now that you can actually visit and say a few prayers in Stations of the Cross and perhaps the Rosary and such like. But as regards for Holy Mass, they're closed now. Funerals can take place providing that there's no more than 100 people in the church, de- depending on the size of the church. Most churches are reasonably big, so 100. Now, it should be very simple for to have Mass. That being the case, that 100 can be in a church, providing they're not on top of one another and separated, and have numbers 1 to 100, and allowing 100 for to get Mass, and then maybe have a few Masses so that when that 100 are finished, that another 100 can come in. I mean, this is the way to do things, not to just sort of throw in the towel and run for the hills. The shepherds should be there for so as people can get Holy Mass and communion and receive the sacraments of confession and that type of thing. Fortunately, I got confession last Saturday in a church where I saw a priest, and there was an exposition of the Holy Sacrament, actually in Navan. And I saw the priest, and I just said to him, he was sitting down inside the altar, I said, any chance of getting confession? And he said, yes. And he went off and then beckoned me to open the gate and beckoned me to go in, and went into the sacristy, and I got confession. Now, I was very glad of that, but of course now I can't receive Holy Communion because there's no Mass where I can get Holy Communion.
Yeah.
Now, funny enough, when I was down in Wexford, I was able to get Mass because it was still held only small numbers of mostly older folk going in. So there was none of this business of the worry that they're talking about in case you're too close to somebody and maybe the sneeze, and the next thing is you're in panic stations, which I think is exaggerated. People sneeze to get hay fever and that type of thing, and it's all exaggerated. But this business of the churches, the shepherds should look after the faithful, because a lot of people are not practicing their Catholic faith now and have left the church. Now, what are they doing? These are the people in this country that voted for abortion and same-sex marriage and getting rid of blasphemy, and that vote for anything. They're in a state of mortal sin. The priests haven't said it, but you can't vote for what they voted for and think that it's all right and not go to Mass. They're in a very perilous state. So that is want to be spoken about. The bishops and priests that want to highlight that fact.
What? Why do you think? Why do you think young people don't go to Mass?
Well, you see, perhaps their parents now are not going. But either way, they should be going to Mass because once they're baptised and made their first Holy Communion, or confirmation especially, when they're baptised, you're baptised with the Holy Spirit. You have a duty to go to attend Mass every Sunday, because if you don't, you're in a state of mortal sin. Unless that you're bedridden or something that you can't go. But if you're doing it on purpose, you're in a very perilous state if that happens to you. And these poor devils that commit suicide. I mean, the truth is not being told to people in these matters. You need to go to Mass and you need to say prayers, and when you do that, at least you have some chance of coping with the difficulties that life presents, because life presents difficulties for everybody. And you don't suddenly, when you get a certain age, don't have difficulties. Every age has difficulties. But the older you get, the wiser you get, and you know that you need to sort of do these things. But at least we were taught when I was young that these things were important. So, in spite of the world of flesh and the devil during one's life, one did try to make sure that one didn't miss Mass and say a few prayers. So we had some chance But the young people now, God help them, whatever is wrong with them, they're not practicing their Catholic faith, so their souls are very terrible at risk. And not alone that, they don't even know the joy and the peace and attending to your Catholic devotions and going to Mass and saying your prayers brings to the heart and soul. You're doing something, you know it's right, because that's what you're meant to do.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much, Oliver.